The courtroom hums like a storm about to break, its dim lights casting long shadows across the polished wood. Usher, Raymond IV, now 46, sits rigid in the witness stand, his fingers curled tightly around a microphone. His face, once boyish and bright, carries the weight of years. Eyes sharp but weary, searching for something lost. Across the room, Sean Diddy Combs sits in the defendant's row, his expression a mask of stone. Above them, a massive screen flickers, displaying a faded photo from 1994. A 14-year-old Usher, his smile hesitant, standing beside Diddy at a Bad Boy Records event. Scrawled in the corner, in shaky ink, Puffy Flavor Camp, NYC. Usher leans forward, his voice low, trembling with the effort of truth. "I haven't slept right since I was 14, he says. Not because of the stage lights or the crowds, because of what I saw at Puffy Flavor Camp." The words hang heavy, slicing through the courtroom's murmur. The crowd falls silent, breaths held, as the camera pans to Diddy, his eyes unreadable. "I was a kid with a dream," Usher continues. "But dreams come with rules. I learned that fast." His gaze drifts to the photo, to the boy he once was. "That's how the game works," he whispers, echoing a phrase Diddy burned into his memory. The screen lingers on the handwritten note, a relic of innocence stolen. Why did he stay silent for 30 years? Who locked those memories away? New York City, 1994. The skyline glittered like a promise, its pulse pounding with ambition and danger. Usher, a 14-year-old from Atlanta, stepped off a plane, his heart racing with dreams of stardom. L.A. Reid, the mastermind behind LaFace Records, had sent him to live with Sean Diddy Combs for Puffy Flavor Camp, a mentorship to mold him into a star with bad boy swagger. Reid believed in Diddy's genius, but feared his chaos, later confessing, "I was turning him over to the wildest party guy in the country. I hoped I wasn't screwing up. I thought it was a school," Usher recalls, his voice tinged with bitter hindsight. "A place to learn how to sing, dance, shine. But it was a survival game." The camp wasn't a studio or a classroom. It was a maze of late-night parties in Upper West Side penthouses, the air thick with whiskey and cigarette smoke. Young artists, barely teens, were thrust into scenes far beyond music. One night, Usher saw a girl, maybe 16, sobbing in a corner, her mascara streaking. An assistant appeared, whisking her away. "Don't look," Diddy said, his hand heavy on Usher's shoulder. "Focus on the music, kid." The courtroom screen shifts, displaying a leaked email from Diddy's assistant, dated March 1994. "Delete call logs from the Upper West Side apartment. Don't let Reid know." Gasps ripple through the gallery. The words, cold and calculated, hint at secrets buried deep. Usher's eyes darken. "I was 14, trying to make my mom proud. But I learned quick. You don't ask questions. You play the game." Diddy's voice echoes in his memory, a low growl. "That's how the game works." Who let a child walk into that world? What was Reid thinking, handing him over? The nights at Puffy Flavor Camp blurred into a haze of neon and fear. From New York to Miami, Usher found himself in rooms where the air felt wrong, where laughter hid something jagged. Sleep slipped away not because of the city's hum, but because of what he couldn't unsee. The sobs in dark corners, the arguments behind locked doors. Diddy's eyes, always watching, always measuring. "I was scared I'd disappear," Usher says, his voice raw. "Like the others who stopped showing up." One night in Miami, 1995, burns bright in his memory. A beachfront villa pulsed with music, its windows glowing against the night. Downstairs, the party raged, but upstairs, voices clashed. Diddy's, sharp and commanding, against another, desperate, pleading. Usher stood frozen at the staircase, his hand gripping the railing. "Don't go up there," a young rapper warned, his eyes hollow. "You don't want to know." The next morning, an assistant slid a document across a table. A non-disclosure agreement, its words stark, absolute confidentiality regarding all activities at Puffy Flavor Camp. Usher, 15 signed, his hand shaking. I didn't know what I was signing away, he says. My voice, my truth. In the courtroom, the NDA appears on the screen, yellowed and creased. Usher's childish scrawl, a scar laid bare. The crowd shifts, uncomfortable. I heard screams through walls, he continues. But by morning, it was like nothing happened. That's what they wanted. For us to forget. Diddy's mantra loops in his mind, a psychological cage. That's how the game works. Why were kids like Usher silenced? Who did those NDAs really protect, the artists or the powerful? The spotlight followed Usher everywhere after Puffy Flavor Camp. By 1997, My Way catapulted him to R&B stardom, with Grammys, world tours, and magazine covers cementing his name. But behind the polished smile, the memories of 1994 festered like a wound. On stage, he was electric, untouchable. Off stage, he was haunted, dodging questions about Diddy, his eyes betraying a secret he couldn't name. Fame is a glittering prison, Usher says, his voice heavy with regret. Every hit, every flash of a camera, every cheer, it was a chain. I was scared that if I spoke, it'd all come crashing down. He carried the weight of those New York nights, the Miami villa, the NDA that bound his truth. Sleep remained elusive, his mind replaying the girl who cried, the voices behind closed doors. A journal entry from 1995, found years later, captures his torment. I want to tell, but if I speak, they'll destroy me. In the courtroom, an attorney reads it aloud, Usher's voice cracking as the words echo. Then came others, Monique, Cassie, whose courage shook the industry's walls. I watched them, Usher says. They showed me silence wasn't safety. It was surrender. Their voices stirred something in him, a spark to break free. The camera lingers on Usher, alone on a stage in his mind, the crowd's roar fading to a hum. His smile was perfect, but his eyes were empty, locked on a past he couldn't outrun. Why does fame demand silence? Who profits when secrets stay buried, the artist or the machine that made them? The courtroom ignites as Usher rises from the witness stand, his finger pointed at Diddy, who sits motionless in the defendant's row. I'm not just talking about you, Sean, he says, his voice a blade cutting through the hush. I'm talking about the system that let this happen. The crowd holds its breath, the air thick with tension. The camera zooms in on Diddy, his face blank, but his eyes flickering with strain. Usher paces, his words sharp, relentless. Puffy Flavor Camp wasn't just one man's game. It was a machine. Record labels knew what went on but signed the checks. Lawyers drafted NDAs to gag us. Journalists took hush money to look the other way. I was 14, a kid with a dream, and they used that dream to control me. His voice rises, trembling with 30 years of pent-up truth. They built a system that chews up kids and spits out stars, or nothing at all. The screen flashes with the final piece of evidence. A grainy recording, Diddy's voice cold and deliberate. Nobody gets to the top without playing the game. Not you, not me, not Usher. A sharp click ends the tape. The courtroom freezes. The words, a guillotine. Gasps ripple through the gallery as the weight sinks in. Usher turns to the crowd, his eyes blazing. I've carried those nights for decades. The screams, the secrets, the fear. I'm done protecting the machine that broke me. He pauses, his voice steady now. That's how the game works, he says, echoing Diddy's mantra. Then, with fire in his chest, and that's why I'm breaking it. The camera pans across the stunned faces, jurors, reporters, onlookers. Who does this system shield? How do you dismantle a machine that turns dreams into nightmares? The courtroom fades, replaced by an empty stage, a single spotlight cutting through the dark. Usher stands at its center, his silhouette sharp against the void. He sings, You Make Me Wanna, a hit from his youth, but the notes carry a new weight, each one a vow, a reckoning. The crowd is gone, the stage bare, yet his voice fills the silence, raw and unbroken. I'm speaking today, he says, his words soft but resolute. so no other 14-year-old has to carry what I did. The spotlight dims, but his message lingers. A call to protect the dreams of the young, to tear down an industry that preys on them. The camera pulls back, the stage dissolving into darkness. A question hangs in the air, unanswered. Who will speak next? Can this system be broken? As Usher's voice faded into the darkened stage, a new light flickered, a crack in the empire's facade. His truth was a spark, igniting whispers of others silenced by Diddy's machine. A system built not just to control, but to erase. Sean Diddy Combs didn't conquer with noise. His empire rose in whispers, calculated, seductive, suffocating. It wasn't built on talent alone, but on a system that lured the vulnerable, reshaped their minds, and locked their truth behind invisible bars. This is the story of that machine, told through the voices it tried to erase, the evidence it couldn't bury, and the cracks that finally let the light in. The Los Angeles night was heavy with promise, the kind that makes a kid's pulse race. Usher, barely 13, stood in a studio, his demo tape clutched like a lifeline. Across the room, Diddy leaned back, eyes sharp, voice low. "You've got it, kid," he said, words dripping like honey. "Stick with me and you're gonna be bigger than MJ." No contract was signed that night. Just a spark, a dream handed to a boy too young to see the strings attached. Diddy's world was a beacon for the fragile. Teenagers with voices bigger than their bank accounts, dreamers with no one to guide them. Those were his targets. He didn't chase them down. He didn't need to. His scouts prowled auditions, talent shows, even church choirs seeking the ones with hunger in their eyes. The pitch was always the same: a golden opportunity, a chance to live in his mansion, train at his so-called flavor camp, and step into the glittering maze of showbiz. It sounded like salvation. It felt like destiny. But Flavor Camp wasn't a school for stars. It was a crucible, forging silence from ambition. They sold it like a fairy tale, a former aide testified, her voice steady but laced with regret. Come to the big house, meet the mogul. But the second you walked in, you weren't a student. You were prey. The trap was meticulous. A 15-year-old singer fresh off a talent show might arrive to find a contract waiting, her name already typed at the top. "This is your shot," a manager would say, sliding the pen across the table. Parents, if they were there at all, nodded eagerly, dazzled by Diddy's name. The kids signed, not knowing they were handing over more than their trust. They were stepping into a machine designed to strip them bare. "I thought I was chosen," a former camper later whispered in court, eyes fixed on the floor. "I didn't know I was caught." And once they were in, the real work began. Not to build their careers, but to bend their will. The mansion's lights were always dim, as if the truth couldn't survive a brighter glow. Music thumped through the walls, a pulse that drowned out doubt. At Flavor Camp, the nights blurred into rituals. Parties that weren't parties, gatherings where the air felt choreographed. Diddy didn't bark orders. He didn't need to. His presence was enough. A glance that pinned you, a smile that promised everything and nothing. Imagine a 16-year-old dancer, her first night in the house. She's handed a drink, the glass cold against her palm. "Loosen up," someone says, a stranger with a famous face. She hesitates. The room doesn't. Laughter spills from corners. A rapper she idolizes downs a shot, unbothered. A camera's red light blinks from a shelf, barely noticeable. And Diddy, circling the room, his voice soft as a secret. "This is how we vibe. You in or you out?" At first, she questioned it. The liquor, the pills passed like party favors, the strangers who lingered too close, none of it felt right. But the room kept moving. Stars, real stars, danced nearby, their ease a silent endorsement. If they were fine, it must be fine, right? Doubt withered in the haze of smoke and bass. Questions died in her throat. She sipped the drink. She smiled, and the machine hummed on. That was Diddy's genius. He didn't force compliance. He crafted an atmosphere where wrong felt normal, where boundaries dissolved like sugar in wine. Alcohol wasn't just a drink, it was vibes. Drugs weren't drugs, they were inspiration. Sex, coerced or filmed, wasn't violation, it was part of the game. Step by step, he rewrote reality. You stopped asking why the cameras were there. You stopped wondering who the guests were. You started believing this was just the culture, the cost of a crown. I didn't know what was wrong anymore, a former protege said, his voice hollow in the courtroom. Everyone was smiling, so I learned to smile too. The manipulation was surgical. Parties stretched into dawn, blurring adult and child consent and control. Hidden cameras rolled, capturing moments that weren't memories but leverage. And Diddy, always watching, turned questions into tests. Hesitate, and you were difficult. Push back, and you were out. Fit in, and you survived until surviving meant losing yourself. I saw things, a dancer later testified, her hands trembling. But I'd stop calling them wrong. That's how they break you. But bending minds wasn't enough. To keep the machine running, Diddy needed more than compliance. He needed control, absolute, invisible, and unbreakable. The party never stopped, but the air grew heavier, like a room running out of oxygen. Once Diddy had your mind, he didn't let go. He didn't need walls to trap you, just contracts, eyes, and the weight of 1,000 unspoken rules. The machine wasn't just in the mansion, it was everywhere. Watching, waiting, ensuring no one stepped out of line. At the heart of it was the non-disclosure agreement, a ritual as routine as a handshake. A 17-year-old singer, still dizzy from her first Flavor Camp party, would find herself in a sterile office. A lawyer, face blank, slid a contract across the desk. Sign here, he'd say, no warmth, no explanation. The pages were thick, the text a blur of legal jargon. She'd hesitate, pen hovering. It's standard, the lawyer would add, voice flat. She'd sign, not knowing she'd just locked her voice in a vault. NDAs weren't just paperwork, they were chains. Singers, dancers, drivers, even caterers. Anyone who crossed Diddy's orbit signed one. Some were kids, barely old enough to vote, handing over their right to speak before they knew what they'd seen. I didn't read it, a former assistant admitted in court, his jaw tight. I just wanted to keep my job. But the cage went beyond contracts. It was a network of eyes. Drivers who noted your every move, bodyguards who stood too close, assistants who logged your words. At Diddy's parties, the stars were the bait, their laughter a glittering distraction. Usher might raise a glass, Neo might crack a joke, but their eyes never lingered too long. They knew when to turn away, when to pretend they hadn't seen the girl stumbling, the camera blinking, the door closing. It wasn't that no one noticed, a former staffer testified, her voice slicing through the courtroom's hush. It's that everyone knew exactly when to blink. The cage was invisible but airtight. You could dance, smile, even shine, but never speak. The stars weren't just guests, they were guards, their presence a silent warning. Nothing's wrong here. Step out of line, and the machine would know. And when it didn't forgive. The machine didn't just control, it crushed. Speak out, and you didn't just lose a gig. You lost your place in the world. Diddy's empire wasn't built on loyalty alone. It thrived on fear, the kind that lingered long after the music stopped. Those who dared to whisper the truth found themselves erased, not with violence, but with precision. A one-hit singer, bold enough to hint at a freak-off party, vanished from the charts. Her label dropped her, her bookings dried up, her name faded like a bad dream. A cameraman who kept a tape, grainy footage of a night that never should have happened, was fired, then blacklisted. An openly gay artist who named Diddy in a podcast? His invites stopped coming. The phone stopped ringing. He was gone, not dead, but buried. The threats came quietly at first. A late-night call, number blocked. You sure you want to talk? Then louder. Tabloid headlines twisting your words, anonymous ex posts calling you a liar, a has-been, a nobody. If that didn't work, the machine turned surgical. Your name disappeared from guest lists, your music from playlists, your face from the industry's memory. You weren't just silenced, you were unmade. But Diddy didn't stop at punishment. He rewrote the story. When whispers leaked, his PR team spun them into misunderstandings. Friendly outlets ran puff pieces, praising his philanthropy. Pastors, pockets lined with his donations, preached his redemption from gilded pulpits. $1 million checks flashed on camera, each one a brick in the wall that hid the truth. The machine didn't just bury scandals, it rebuilt a god from their ashes. This wasn't about saving face, a whistleblower said, her voice trembling in court. It was about making you believe the truth never existed. The machine was flawless, until it wasn't. A single crack, a video, a voice, could bring it all down. But for years, it ran like clockwork, grinding down anyone who dared to speak, ensuring the empire stood tall on a foundation of silence. The machine didn't run on Diddy's charisma alone. It needed pillars, untouchable names who lent their glow to his shadow. Tyler Perry, Oprah, T.D. Jakes, they weren't complicit in the dirt, but their presence was a shield, their silence a currency. In the glittering halls of Diddy's empire, these gatekeepers didn't just attend the parties. They sanctified them. A leaked email flashed on the courtroom screen told the story. A PR firm's memo, curt and clinical, secure TD Jakes for the gala. His sermon will offset the rumors. Another email weeks later outlined a $1 million donation to a megachurch, timed perfectly with a tabloid scandal. The checks weren't charity. They were camouflage, dressed up as grace. Diddy didn't just buy loyalty. He bought halos, each one polishing his image brighter. These weren't isolated favors. The gatekeepers were woven into the machine's fabric. Perry's production deals leaned on Diddy's networks. Oprah's endorsements, subtle but strategic, gave his events a sheen of legitimacy. Jakes' sermons, delivered from pulpits Diddy funded, spoke of redemption while sidestepping truth. Their names carried weight, and Diddy wielded them like armor, deflecting suspicion with every handshake, every photo op. Monique's voice cut through the haze during her testimony. "That wasn't an apology," she said, eyes locked on the jury. "It was a transaction." Her words hung heavy, a blade slicing through the myth. She'd seen the machine up close, its gears greased with favors, its levers pulled by power. The gatekeepers didn't need to know the details. Their job was simpler: stand close, smile wide, and let the world assume all was well. The machine operated like a church, its rituals pristine, its purpose profane. PR firms churned out press releases, framing Diddy as a philanthropist, a visionary, a redeemed soul. Churches cashed his checks, their pastors preaching forgiveness to packed pews. The gatekeepers didn't pull the strings. They held the curtain, ensuring the stage stayed set, the truth stayed buried. And for years it worked until one voice refused to bow. The courtroom fell silent, but the weight of truth was deafening. Cassie Ventura stood, her gaze steady, her voice a quiet thunder. "I'm not afraid anymore," she said. "I spoke for the ones who couldn't." No tears, no tremble. Just a woman shedding a decade of silence like a second skin. Her words weren't just testimony, they were a reckoning, cracking the empire Diddy built on buried truths. But Diddy wasn't the disease, he was a symptom. The real poison is a culture that thrives on willful forgetting, where power buys silence and truth is a casualty. His machine, NDAs, cameras, gatekeepers, wasn't unique. It was a blueprint, one the industry polished for decades. Cassie's voice broke it open, and others followed, their stories spilling like light through a shattered window. Yet the machine isn't dead. It's recalibrating, scouting its next mark. So ask yourself, who's next? Which kid, eyes bright with dreams, will walk into a room where the candles flicker and a camera's already rolling? Will we see them? Or will we, like so many before, choose to look away? The truth doesn't need permission to surface. It needs us to listen. And this time, the world is watching.